Hello and welcome to my channel where we talk about tips and tricks for teaching elementary music. Okay, here we go. So today's video is about a subject that I really tend to geek out about a little bit, and that is assessment. How do we assess our students in a tangible way so that parents can know what their students' grades are and understand how we arrived at that conclusion, administration can understand it, the students can understand it, and we can provide quantitative data for all of the stakeholders. Oh, and I am also going to tell you how to write a SMART goal, just in case you have to do that for your district. More explanation later on in the video. So let me back up a little bit. When I went to college and got my undergrad in music education, there were no classes that I took that explained how to actually grade my students. There were also no professional development that I had later on when I became a teacher. There were no guidelines given to me by anyone about how to give my students grades. So it was very subjective. About 6.5 years ago, when I was in graduate school, I had to do a final project that was research-based. And I had been struggling for a while with how to grade my students. I had come up with various little checklists, but I never really felt like it was really completely justified. So I decided to create an elementary music rubric packet. So I'm just going to show you, it's this big little notebook here with a bunch of stuff in it, and just give you a piece of it. So there would be like a whole bunch of objectives and the pointage. And don't worry about seeing this because I'm going to show this to you in a better way. And then the data collection sheet where you get the information and then you translate that into grades. This tool was super helpful. I now had a plan of how to grade my students. I now had a way to justify the grades that I was giving them. I had an explanation to give anybody that asked, why did my child get such and such? So I told you at the beginning of the video that I geek out about this subject a little bit. I've actually done a few presentations on this subject of assessment in the general music classroom. So part of what I'm going to be showing you today is from a PowerPoint that I did a couple years back at one of the presentations on this particular subject. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started. So you can see on the screen that I received an email from a parent that was very concerned about their child and why they got a particular grade in music class. And that was the statement that they made in the email. How do you justify grades in music? 6 or 7 years ago, I would not have really been able to answer that question. So we're going to delve into this more fully. So here's the next one. Okay, so a lot of music educators, especially veteran music educators, they can tell you they know an A student when they see one or hear one. If they've got 20 years worth of experience on listening to high school students sing or elementary students sing or band people playing an instrument, they're probably right on the mark with knowing this is an A student, a B student, a C student. But parents and administrators don't want to trust that you really know what you're doing just based off of your subjective, I know it when I see it kind of philosophy. So there seems to be like almost like a curtain of mystery or a shroud of mystery surrounding elementary music grades, possibly middle and high school grades as well, but my focus right now is on elementary music. So here we go. What is our purpose? What is our purpose in the education room? We are supposed to educate. That is our very first thing that we are supposed to do. We are not focused on looking for a star. We are not American Idol, America's Got Talent, any of the many variety of competition shows out there that are looking for the next recording artist that you can think of. That's not our job. our focus is on education, not looking for a star. Okay. Music is subjective. We all know this. We all have different likes, different focuses in our music, in what we want to hear, in what we want to perform. Sometimes what we want to listen to in our downtime is totally different than what we want to perform as a professional musician. So we all have different preferences, and it can be very subjective. And you can't tell somebody, oh, you don't like jazz? Why don't you like jazz? Well, there's something wrong with you. No, everybody has their own particular likes and preferences. So music can be very subjective. Why is data actually necessary in the music class? SMART goals. Accountability, parent understanding, that's a big thing. You'd be surprised how many parents think, well, all you do in your classroom is sing all day long. And I know my child loves to sing because I hear them in the backseat of the car, so I don't understand why they're not getting an A in music class. Administration, they want to know that you're not winging it. Okay, so all this, you might be at this point saying, well, this all sounds great and all. Yeah, accountability, parents will know what I'm doing, I can justify it and all that sort of stuff, but it's still music. It's still the same thing of just standing up there and going, well, I think that student is an A, I think that student is a B. There are actual tangible elements that you can assess. You are not going to assess the star quality. Remember, we are educators, not looking for a star. You're going to assess the tangible elements. So let's look at that. Are they holding the instrument correctly? I mean, they either are or they aren't, okay? So that is a tangible element that you can assess. Are they singing with a natural voice? I tell my students all the time, I don't want to hear any monsters. I don't want to hear any playground voices. I don't want to hear you imitating anybody. You'd be surprised how many students will sit there and sing in a way that they think that you want them to sing. For example, they might go, yeah, okay. Nobody wants to hear that. I didn't even want to hear that just now when I did it. Okay, where you're looking for that natural voice. Mary had a, right? You're looking for that natural voice for them to come out. That can be one element right there where you're not even focusing on intonation or anything else. You're just focusing on their natural voice. Here's another strand. Are they matching pitch? Okay, you can focus on that by itself. We'll talk more about how to do one strand at a time in a little bit. Musical accuracy, okay? I don't know why my nose must itch or something. Sorry about that. Okay, how can we assess? We need to watch, we need to listen, we need to have some sort of a tool such as checklists or rubrics in order to have the data that we need. So here's how you're going to start. You can take your blank roster and you can use a plus, check, or minus system. Very simple. I'll explain more of that in just a moment. Or you can take your blank roster and you can make a teacher-made rubric on a 4 or 5 point scale. This is harder to do because you do have to take the time to write out the rubric and to line it up with the objectives. This is the blank rosters using the plus, check, or minus system is very quick to do and easy to do to get yourself started. Once you decide whether you're going to do a checklist system with plus, minus, and checks, or a 4 or 5 point rubric scale, you need to take the time before the first time you use it to write out what your actual grading scale is going to look like and be consistent and use that grading scale. And the key to all of this is consistency, because unlike a piece of written work where there's like 10 problems and you can take it over to a grading scale and look and see, okay, they got 8 out of 10 right, that's an 80%. We are using rubrics and plus, check, and minus, which still has a little bit of a subjective nature to it. So you need to try to be as consistent as you can across the board. Okay, so let's look at this right here. So for kindergarten, I use a plus, check, minus, And I don't know that it's actually called a zero symbol. For me, it is the zero with the line going through it. Okay, so those are the 4 areas that I use. And in kindergarten in my district, they get outstanding, very good, satisfactory, or needs improvement. And then there's an unsatisfactory category as well, which would be the equivalent of failing. There is no numeric value on my kindergarten report cards. That's just the way my district set it up. So that is why I do not have any numeric values up here, okay? So I've decided the plus sign stands for outstanding, the check mark stands for very good, minus sign is satisfactory, the zero symbol is needs improvement. Now for my 1st through 4th grade class, I have them on a 4-point rubric scale. And you can see that I've gone 4 plus is 100, 4 is 98, and so on and so forth, okay? You can look down the list and see what that is. For 5th grade chorus, I do them a little bit differently. They are also on a numerical system, but I have had as many as 45 5th graders at a time. As you can imagine, assessment takes a while with 45 students. So I try to be as fast as I can. And the quickest system I've ever discovered is just doing plus, check, minus on down the line. So you're going to see later on in the presentation, it's very similar to what I do with kindergarten, except you see the 2 in parentheses. That is because when I am giving a just in the class assessment across the board to all the students in my 5th grade chorus class, I am checking them for preparation and participation. Preparation, I wrote on a whiteboard all of the songs that we're going to do in the order that they're going to do them in, and the students know when they come in, they have to get their folder out, find those songs, put them in that order so that as we're done with one song, we can go immediately into the next song. So that's preparation. 9 times out of 10, they get pluses there because they really have no excuse not to. It's written down for them. They know the routine and they just do it. And then the participation side, that will be another plus, check, minus system there. When I look around the room randomly, is that student singing? I'm not looking for if they're singing loudly. I'm not looking for if they're singing constantly. I'm just looking, are they singing? So if they're singing at all, and it looks like they're singing pretty much the whole class time, that's obviously a plus. If they sing on one song, but they're not singing on the next one, that would be a check. If they're singing like just when I look at them and don't sing the rest of the time, that would be a minus. And that zero symbol, they're not really singing at all or very, very, very little, okay? So it just kind of goes down from there. I do not do this system every single class time. It does take time for me to do that. I have to have them just put the music on and let them just sing along with it while I'm sitting here going like this. And I try to do just like few students on this song and then do a few students on another song. I kind of give up my conducting and my teaching role to be able to assess them. So it is time consuming. So I try to do that particular assessment with 5th grade about once or twice in 9 weeks, just kind of a quick going around the room like that. And then over here is the actual numeric value. Remember, I told you they're getting graded on preparation and participation. So they may get 2 plus signs, but they may have 1 plus and 1 check and so on and so forth. So I went over here and I wrote a plus sign plus a check equals 95, a plus sign plus a minus sign. So you can see how I wrote it down over there. So this is kindergarten, and over here is where I have my student names, and I actually just do their initials. It saves me time in putting them up here. Plus, if somebody were to walk in my classroom and open my grade book, they wouldn't necessarily know who was what. And that's the teacher's name, just so I know which class this is. And you can see that this was 3rd 9 weeks and the year that I particularly did this. There are 4 categories that I have to assess in for 1st grade through 4th grade. So I just use that same logic with kindergarten. So in 1st through 4th grade, I have to put numerical grades in singing, moving, listening, and playing. So I still assess kindergarten that way, but when it comes to the report card, they're just getting 1 overall grade. So you can see here where I've got This particular student got all pluses here, and I haven't assessed playing yet. But this student down here got a check mark and 2 pluses. Probably in this situation, maybe the student wasn't here the day that I assessed that. Okay, and I'm going to guess that this is probably an empty chair. This was a couple of years ago, so I don't remember the exact scenario there. So now let's look at 5th grade. Remember I told you they are also on a plus, check, or minus system. So we've got preparation, right? And that's that, do you have all your songs ready to go? So this particular day, looks like a lot of students did not. But you can see on this day that pretty much everybody down the board had their songs ready to go. And then participation, did they participate? Okay. And this line right here is, this was a student who, whenever I did this, I guess from November 13th on, they moved away from my classroom, and I just did not bother to remake this whole sheet just to accommodate another student. And here's another student who must have moved away as of January 15th. Okay. All right. Here's another thing that I do for 5th grade chorus. I will give a singing test where I will have the students come up in groups of 3s or 4, and they will sing for me a particular section of a song. It's usually a whole section, like the A section, B section, first verse, second verse, whatever. And I will assess them on whether or not they have lyrics, rhythms, intervals. Did they do the rest, keep the tempo in a particular song? Okay. Each one of these being worth 20 points. If they miss 2 or 3 lyrics, I'll take 2 or 3 points off of that section, so on and so forth. All right. Let me talk to you about the actual process of assessment. So you've got your tool ready to go. And just like I said, I'm going to use this as an example. You need to decide how many students you think you can assess at the same time. Okay. So for this particular assessment here, being chorus, this would take me the entire class time to assess. 45 students, and I'm making them do like a whole section of a song. So a good 8 measures worth of a song, and I'm really trying to listen to them for all of those little components because I'm assessing them on more than one strand at a time, okay? So one strand at a time would be super easy if I was just gonna assess them on lyrics, Doesn't matter whether they have intervals, rhythms, showing all the rest, keeping the tempo, doesn't matter. I'm just assessing them on lyrics, then I don't have to focus on anything else. But because this is a singing test, it's a bigger grade for them, I assess them on all these components at the same time. I will talk more about assessing one strand at a time when we get into 1st through 4th grade. So back to how you would assess them. So I have learned through my experience that it's very easy for me to get 3 or 4 students to come up to me while I'm at my desk and you've got your music playing. And let's say I'm going to assess them on the B section. I will play that A section and I'll say, you guys can sing along to the A section if you want to kind of get into it. And if not, you can just wait until the B section comes on. And some of them will sing it and some of them will just wait. And as soon as the B section comes on, I'm sitting there, I've got my list with me and I'm listening to my students and I'm making my, choices on what they're doing. Okay. And then before the students leave me, I will tell them what their grade is, just so before they walk away and I get the next group. In case you are wondering what is going on in my classroom while we're doing this with everybody else, this is the time that I will give my 5th graders a theory worksheet of some sort, like treble clef or notes and rests or whatever type of theory worksheet that you want them to do, and that will count as a written assignment. So they come to class that day and I have told them multiple times beforehand, hey, on such and such a day, we're going to have a singing test on this song. And it's a song we've been working on for a while, and it's a section we worked on for a while. And it doesn't need to be memorized. They can bring their music up with them if they want to. And I'm going to assess you on this. And they come in the room and I give everybody that worksheet of whatever that theory worksheet is and a pencil, and I might even explain it really quickly if it needs explanation, if it's something that I don't think that they can do without me easily, which is actually a good reason to pick something that they can do without you so they're not bothering you while you're focused on everybody else. And then I will just go down my roster and I'll say, so-and-so, 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 and so-and-so, come on up. And they'll do it. And then they go back to their seat. And then I'll call the next 3 or 4 students, however many I think I can get through. So that's how I do a singing test in 5th grade course. So let's look at just a regular, it's not a singing test, it's just an assessment in the moment. And this happens to be a 2nd grade rubric, okay? So we're getting into rubrics now. The other things were checklists. What I did just before this with the singing test, that is a rubric, but this is a different type of a rubric. Let's look at this one, R26. Read rhythm patterns that include half notes rest and whole notes rest, okay? So then let's go over to the rubric, and you've got rhythms. That's what that goes with. And if they play all rhythms correct, then they're going to get a 4 points, and that's advanced. If they make 1 or 2 errors, they're going to be proficient, and they'll get a 3. If they make 3 to 4 errors, they're progressing, and that's 2. If they make 5+ errors, they're emerging. And this language right here, advanced, proficient, progressing, emerging, you want to use language like that when you're creating your objectives, not A, B, C, D, E, F, not really good, kind of good, satisfactory, not so much, awful. You don't want to use anything like that. So use words like advanced, proficient, progressing, emerging, mastery, developing, those types of words, okay? So now we're going to look at that particular data sheet that goes with that rubric. So here's where we're going to get into one strand at a time, okay? So this is 2nd grade playing rhythm instruments, and you can see the categories that I have here. Identify instruments. Do they know what a maraca looks like? Very simple. Tempo. Can they keep the tempo of a song when they're playing? Loud and soft. Can they play it at the right dynamic levels? Technique. Can they hold it the right way? Rhythms. Do they play with rhythmic accuracy? And this line right here is a line that I put because you can see I just repeated the categories. Okay. So on October 9th, I decided clearly that I was going to hold up an instrument and say, hey, my friend in chair number 1, can you tell me what instrument this was? As you can see, this is 2nd grade. They should know the names of these instruments. It looks like everybody, at least in this section right here, got a 4, which means they were getting an A, okay? On January 8th, I did tempo, and I probably, this is the way I usually do it, I probably had some music playing, had a rhythm pattern in front of them, and I was just kind of scanning the room and seeing, are they playing it and keeping the tempo? You can see that the majority of my students did, but this student right here, maybe not so much. This student did a little better than this student did. And this student, the A is just absent. Technique. Do they hold the instrument correctly? Clearly, everybody on this group got 4s. I try to set my students up for success. I'm not going to assess them on something that they've never done before. Like, I'm not going to put a triangle in their hand if they've never played a triangle and assess them on the triangle that day. That's not a good idea. So I try to make sure that I'm assessing them on something that they've done before, all right? So in this situation right here, so going back to the identify instruments, I'm not going to call 3 or 4 friends up at the same time. I am going to sit there and I'm going to say, okay, my friend in chair number 1, and I'm going to hold up, tell me what this instrument is. My friend in chair number 2, tell me what this instrument is. You know, I'm going to rotate around and do different instruments, and I'm not going to tell them whether they're right or wrong because I might have to hold this up for 4 more friends. Okay? Interestingly enough, when I do listening, I have a similar assessment strand in listening where I will play this, but it will be hidden behind the piano, so the students can't see it, but they can hear it, and they have to tell me what instrument that is. Tempo. That's a quick scan of the room. You've got them playing, you're just kind of scanning the room. Who's got it, who doesn't? Technique. You could also just scan the room. You could have them sit there and play that pattern over and over again and look and see, are they holding it correctly? Are they hitting it correctly? Or you could call 3 or 4 friends up at a time if you wanted to. If I was doing rhythms, I would probably call 3 or 4 friends up at a time and have them play a 1 measure rhythm for me really quickly, and then switch to a different rhythm and have another set of kids come up. My students are very used to this, that I let them know ahead of time, this is what I'm assessing, this is what I'm looking for, and they know my process very easily. Let's look at some of the strands you could assess in moving. So steady beat, that's a good first one to start with. Can they find that steady beat and keep that steady beat? Tempo, when they're moving, can they keep that tempo? Body percussion, okay? Rhythms, can they do rhythms with their hands? Any of those can be moving. Form, that's usually choreography. We're dancing, the A section, the B section, are they following what they're doing? You can see rhythms is another choice. Cultures, so you might do something from a culture that you want to see if they can do a particular dance from that culture, okay? These are all things that I have objectives to back up these strands that I'm assessing on a given day. So if I have to assess in singing, moving, listening, and playing, I'm only going to assess 1 strand on 1 category in a class time. So my students come in week 1 of a particular month, I might assess listening. The next week I might assess movement. The next week I might assess singing. The next week I might assess playing. It just depends on what I need to have. My goal is always to have 2 grades per category by the end of the 9-week period. So in other words, 2 listening grades, 2 singing grades, 2 moving grades, and 2 playing grades. I don't always make that goal. I don't have a specific requirement for my district of how many grades I need to have, but I just feel like I can justify what I'm doing in my classroom more if these students have at least 2 grades per category per 9-week period. So here are the strands you would assess in listening. Timbre, do they know that's a brass instrument? Classroom instrument, getting back to what I was saying, playing the triangle, but it's hidden behind the piano. Can they identify that? Orchestra instrument, can they be more specific? So this would be like, I hear the brass family, but now I hear the trumpet, okay? Mood, this is subjective for the students. There's no wrong answer to mood. It's just, how does this music make you feel? So I want them to give me a mood word, happy, sad, sleepy, funny, angry, whatever, a mood word. And that's because there is an objective, or there was in our District 1, about experiencing different moods in songs. And then cultures, where do you think this song comes from? Do you think it comes from Africa? Do you think it comes from South America? Do you think it comes from Europe? Where do you think it comes from? And so on and so forth. Singing, okay? A lot of people think that if a singer is out of tune, that they're a bad singer, that they can't sing at all. Because that's the thing that grates on our nerves, is that out of tune singing, right? Well, if they're using a natural voice, this is what this singing voice is. Are they using a natural voice? So you can get a good grade for that if you're singing a natural voice. Sight reading, do you do a good job on that? Are you singing with rhythmic accuracy? Are you singing with correct dynamics? How's your posture? Can you staff read? Can you go so me, so me, if it's written on the staff? Can you do choral parts? Okay, so in tune is definitely a strand, and you may have a student that sings horribly out of tune, but that's something that you can work with them on. But meanwhile, maybe they're using their natural voice. Maybe they can sight read. Maybe they're doing their rhythms. Maybe they're doing the lyrics correctly. I don't think I have that up here, but all of these things are components of singing. So getting back to that email that I had at the beginning that I was telling you about, how do you justify grades in music? And this was that email that I received. I was able to take right from that elementary music packet that I made, pull up the rubric that went with singing, and I highlighted the actual objectives that we were using: discover, use, and develop singing voice, match pitch using head voice. I was able to come down here to intonation, and this says sings in tune and uses head voice with 2 prompts, so she's developing. So for singing, instead of getting an A or a B, she was getting a C, which is not a bad grade at all. It's C means average. And this is a it was a first grade student. Oh, let me talk about prompts. Basically, so I would sing, Mary had a little lamb, and I'd have my 3 or 4 students in front of me, and because I'm checking for intonation, I've got my ear going like this, and I'm kind of walking in front of the students, and I'm going, Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. And I'm telling them to sing with me at the same time, and I'm hearing if they're matching my pitch, because that's the truest way to do intonation with students. Can they match exactly what you're singing pitch-wise? So this particular student, it's been like 5 years now, so I'm not sure exactly what I did, but probably went something like this. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. And maybe she got up there by little lamb, right? So she was listening the first couple lines, singing along with me, but out of tune, and eventually gets up there maybe the second line or third line. And so that's how she ended up with developing, because she got there. Let's talk about SMART goals. What are SMART goals? SMART goals stand for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely goals. It is a way to show student progress in your classroom. You give a pre-test, a mid-year test, and a post-test, and you collect all of the data from those 3. The idea being that at the beginning of the year, they're probably at this level, middle of the year, they're here, and by the end of the year, they're here. So for the music room, using a rubric-based assessment works really, really well. So if you look at the assessment that I have up here, I have a rubric for 3rd grade recorders. So 3rd grade recorder, that is the first year that I teach recorder in my classroom, and they should know like nothing from the recorder. I put a notated example up on the screen that has B, A, and G in it, and I asked them to play it on the recorder. My students look at me like, what are you talking about? I've never even held this thing before. And I assure them this is not for a grade. This is just so I can see what I need to teach you, etc., etc. So they generally score extremely low because they've never even tried that instrument before. But you can see the objectives. You've got identify the treble staff, naming lines and spaces, and then read and perform simple skeletal melodies. And I say specific, play a BAG recorder song. Not just play it, but be able to read it on the notation and play it. So you can see the 3 categories that I have here: treble clef letters, rhythms, and fingerings. And if they do their left hand on top, that's plus 25. They might have really good fingerings, but with the wrong hand on top. Same with the rhythms. They might play it rhythmically accurate. They might even be able to tell you the treble clef letters. And their fingerings are good, but that is the wrong hand on top. They still should get some sort of points for doing these other things correctly. So you can see the wording that I gave, which was advanced, satisfactory, developing, and apprentice. The treble clef letters, all letters are correct. 1 to 2 errors, 3 to 4 errors, 5 errors. You can see what that is there. Now, then I have a data collection sheet that I would use. So I'd put the student's name there, and I would put down, what was it, 25, 20, all of those points, and add it up. But when the student's standing in front of me, I'm looking at their fingerings and their correct hand and their rhythm. The treble clef is a written component, so I would put that information in later. And then I would add all my points up, and I would be able to go and write my goal. So let's look at a SMART goal. So this is the one that I did last year. I will tell you that the wording sounds very educational because that's what administrators are looking for. If you have to do a SMART goal in your district, make sure that you find out what structure they want that SMART goal to look like. I did not come up with this wording on my own. I was given examples, and I made it work the best that I could for music. So let's look at it. During the current school year, 2020 to 2021, remember it's a timely goal, so they need to know when it is. 100% of the third grade students in a specified class will show measurable progress in their ability to play the recorder and read notated recorder music. Okay, measurable progress. So we've got timely and measurable. This progress will be measured by a teacher-created test with rubrics. So you have to name your tool. The assessment includes written and performance elements. So you need to say what type of assessment it is, because in a classroom setting, it's probably going to all be a written assessment of some sort. 75% of the assessed students will progress at least one tier, while the remaining 25% will show growth from their initial assessment. So this is just a really fancy way of saying, by the end of the school year, the third graders are going to know how to play that recorder and know how to read the treble clef. 3/4 of them are going to do a lot better than they did at the beginning of the school year. The other quarter, the other 25%, may not grow by leaps and bounds, but they should show some progress. So then you have to include your tiers just so they know what your criteria are. And you can see that for the red tier, it's 0 to 59%. Yellow, it's 60 to 69%. Green, and so on and so forth. I will tell you that when I give this assessment, especially beginning recorder, pretty much all my students fall in that red category. And that makes it fairly easy to pull everybody up to at least higher in the red category. Remember, some of them might not make it out of red, but if they had a 33 percentile to start and at the end of the year they're at a 58 percentile, that does meet your goal because they did show some sort of growth from their initial assessment. Ideally, you want them to get, at least to yellow, if not to yellow, to green. If you can get some to blue, that's fantastic, but that's probably not going to be realistic for very many of your students, just because they only see you once a week for 45 minutes and they forget things. And on the day that you give the assessment, who knows what might be going on that particular day. Okay, thanks for hanging in there. I know that this was a super long video, but I felt that there were a lot of things that I needed to pass on to you about assessment and SMART goals to help you to have success in your classroom. Don't forget to subscribe. Have a great day.